Hey everyone, it is Quickened, and today I'm going to tell you the story of what happened with my Bronco. I haven't made like a video about my personal life in a little while, and I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about everything that happened because one, it kind of seems like a really crazy story, and two, like it is personal, but I think the Bronco is kind of like a big part of this channel. Deliberately or not, I think that if you've been here for a long time, you've kind of followed the process of the Bronco or been in videos that take place in my Bronco or about it in any sort of way. And if you're new, my boyfriend and I together had an 82 Ford Bronco that he basically restored almost like 100%. And it was pretty incredible, and he got into a car accident that totaled the Bronco. So I'll go into the story of that. I want to refrain a little bit about getting emotional about the loss of the car for sure. And I tried to like kind of make it funny, and I thought that the like Bronco ASMR video that I made would be the like resting point of talking about the Bronco. But I thought I would kind of get into the story and tell you guys what happened because it does seem pretty crazy. So, driving home from a skate park, driving this way with the right of way with no stop sign, a guy came down this side street, like this was a main road. So a guy came down this side street, didn't stop at the stop sign, and went to just like go straight, and the Bronco actually hit the front of his car. So it was technically a head-on collision. From like my first reaction, and if you follow me on Instagram, my first reaction was just like this was a bad driver who ran the stop sign. And that's kind of like where my emotion immediately went, because I just feel like, especially in Philadelphia, I see a lot of people like drive completely crazy, like create their own rules. Yesterday, I watched a guy drive up on the sidewalk to get around everybody, but it was a traffic jam, so he just ended up in front of everybody but on the sidewalk driving. Like, it keeps getting worse and worse, and I actually haven't ridden my bicycle this year because I have been really nervous. I'm a pretty avid cyclist, and I keep up to date in my personal life with all the like bike advocacy that happens in Philadelphia. So if you ever have a bike question, you can always ask me, even if I'm not like projecting that I'm a bike person like publicly online. But this year I have like really taken it easy on being a cyclist, and you know, for the last 5 years that has been a passion of mine, but driving lately has really just got me like spooked. So my initial reaction was that this guy ran the stop sign. So inside of the Bronco, I wear seatbelts, so inside the Bronco, the car itself kind of didn't take any physical impact on the inside. So it was the truck that absorbed most of the damage. So when the guy hit the Bronco, he actually got out of the car and ran away. So this is kind of where the whole accident became a crime, and I stopped kind of posting about it online. So he fled the scene, and it wasn't like what you expect, I guess traditionally, like maybe his car was uninsured or the car was stolen or something like that, because it was actually a really nice car. So he fled. So in Philadelphia, if you get into like a minor accident, you're encouraged to not call the police. You're encouraged to just like exchange information and deal with it with your insurance company. You know, if like it's a fender bender, something kind of mild. Like a couple months ago, John was driving and a guy whipped open his door or something, and John clipped his mirror. Like for something like that, you don't call the police, like you handle it within each other. I've kind of always been told that without enough even time to think about it, the police arrived immediately. Police came from behind the guy and then on both sides. Immediately this seemed like very abnormal, and apparently with all that information, it was apparent that the guy didn't run the stop sign. He was actually in pursuit of the police, And that's when he was trying to get away from the police and crashed head on into the Bronco and then just ran. So all of this is happening and I don't know what to do. I hit up my neighbor and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So she arrives, and with that, the police have John go into like the detective's car and give his statement, which is literally like, I was just driving. And they make sure he's like legally allowed to drive and all that stuff. And the news come. I'm a pretty reasonable person. Like, I like to go with the flow. I like to laugh things off if possible. If I'm upset, usually I just get pretty quiet. I'm not really aggressive. So when the news came, I was like, I don't want to be videotaped. And before anyone in the comments is like, well, legally this and legally that, I hear you, and I'm pretty versed in it because of what I do for a living. But I was just hoping that I could just say that out loud and maybe the guy would have some compassion, and he didn't. You know, he told me that he can legally film me. So again, I was like, hey, listen, I don't want my Bronco on TV. This is a really hard time for us, and I really don't want it captured on TV. I do not want this on TV. And I was trying to be really nice to him, a little more aggressive, dialed up at this point. And he basically said, this is my job and I have to do it. Please don't make it hard for me to do my job. Which is like kind of annoying. So then I was like, get the f away from us. I don't want my Bronco on TV like this. And he's like, no one knows it's your Bronco. And I was like, this is the only orange Bronco in Philadelphia. And like, all I could imagine was the news of the Bronco, like getting to my grandparents before I could talk to them, or like getting to my family before I could talk to them, or getting to you guys before I could talk to you guys. So basically, like, I know he was just doing his job and everything like that, even though I feel like he was the dick. I was like, get the fuck away from us. So all he did was go to the end of the block and take his footage. I never saw it. Well, I don't have cable, so I never saw it on TV. You guys can chime in if you saw it, but I don't know. I just like really didn't want that moment on TV because with everything going on, I was like, look, I don't know what's going on. And I like have to be the one who tells the story to like my grandparents or whatever. I was pretty mean. Like, John wasn't with me and all of this was happening, and like at the same time, like all of this liquid is just coming out of the bottom of the Bronco. And all the meanwhile, like the street's completely blocked off and people are still trying to drive down the street. And they're like driving up on the sidewalk and they're like doing all this stuff. It's just like so crazy. And the street is lined with houses, and the people from the houses are like shouting and yelling out at us and stuff like that. So I was kind of worried that the guy who had fled was maybe like from that neighborhood and like they knew him or they were his friends and they were upset that we were talking to police. Like, I just had all of these feelings like going on. I didn't really know what to do. And also I was like ready to be mean to the camera guy. I kind of figured since police were there, you didn't have to go into that normal like, I just got in a car accident, let me take pictures and strike up a flare and all this stuff. My neighbor was like, oh, look at that, look at this, look at that. So I started to take pictures. In my mind, I was trying to be really respectful to John and what was happening, and like had no idea like if I took a picture the effect it would have. So I was trying to just like honor his privacy and also figure out what was going on. But my neighbor was like, you have to take pictures. Like, you have to start taking pictures. And I didn't see the police taking any pictures, so I was like, okay. So I took a bunch of pictures, and then we went to the guy's car who had hit the Bronco, and the police had opened up his glove box and like looked through his paperwork, and his driver's license was there, his paperwork was there, his ID badge from his job was there. And in my opinion, I think that he has a really good job. Like, when I saw his ID badge, I was like, none of this adds up. This is so weird. I made a mental note to remember his name, and his name sounded like an Office reference that I could easily remember, so I kind of just like created a thing for him and like put his name in my memory and took some pictures. The whole time I kind of like felt like I was stepping on the police's toes doing this stuff, but I'll tell you, it actually really, really helped that I did all that stuff. In the moment, I felt like maybe I was embarrassing John, or I wasn't being really respectful of what happened. I felt that guilt, and that I was like overdoing the police's work. But I'll tell you, it was really, really good that I ended up doing that, and I'm glad that I did. John gave his statement, police detective like gave us his card, and then regular like blue shirt police stayed with us, and they called a tow truck company. I don't exactly know how that works. I think if like we had a buddy who could tow us, like I'm not sure if it has to go through police first. But if you're ever in an accident, I guess in the neighborhoods of Philadelphia, tow truck drivers, like independent tow truck drivers, start to like kind of circle you and like circle around the accident and ask like, you need a tow, you need a tow. So one of the police officers talked to me and he was like, hey, I'm giving you honest advice. Don't talk to any of these tow guys. Let us handle it. And you like don't know who to trust in these situations. We ended up tow crow guys. We were like, nah, like we're good. Like the police have to handle it. By this point, it was like 3 hours. The street had been blocked off. People were like trying to just get around us. It was so stupid. Like just go a block up and go that way. So while we were waiting there, the news got back to us that the guy who fled, they had caught him, and he had some drugs on him and an illegal weapon, and he ran from the police. And apparently he was pulled over for a moving violation, and when the cop leaned in the window, he like sped off, and it injured the cop as well. So a whole bunch of crimes in a very short period of time. So he went right to jail. Problem was though that when two people are in a car accident, you like need to exchange information, and the ability to do that like was kind of forfeited. So when the tow truck driver came, we actually started the Bronco, and the Bronco actually turned over and started, which was at the time almost something to like get excited about, but we knew that like the Bronco was over. So the Bronco was able to turn over. The problem was the guy's car, because it was a brand new car. I guess when you hit a brand new car, they go into like some sort of damage or like hit mode. Like, what am I trying to say? Like an accident mode, because they have a computer that kind of like turns the whole car like pew. So because of that, and because like the tow truck driver didn't have the keys or whatever to like override the car, towing that car was harder. But we stayed there the whole time because the tow truck driver, one, was wearing slides, but two, didn't know like how to operate the Bronco. I guess the majority of the time he is towing these newer vehicles or doesn't know stick. I'm not really sure. He reminded me a lot of my brother, who would definitely take like a tow truck driver job but might not know how to drive stick, but like took it anyway because it's a good job. So he didn't know what to do with the Bronco. So I was kind of just like explaining things to him. And even my first car, Jeep Cherokee, when you put the key in the ignition to get the key out, there's like a button on the other side of the wheel, boop, and then you get the keys out. It's kind of like a release button. Cars don't do that anymore. But I remember being like, this is the release button to get the keys out of the ignition, because he wanted the keys to tow it. So at that point, the police were like, you guys can go, like we'll wait and make sure he gets the truck like on the tow all right. But even then, John had to like take a hammer out of like his toolbox and like help the guy get the Bronco on there. Like, if we wouldn't have been there, if we were like, peace, tow it yourself, like I don't think it would have worked out. But we helped him enough, and then the police kind of took care of the paperwork. Our neighbor drove us home in her smart car, and I stuffed myself into the trunk because it has 2 seats. So the next day, we went to the tow yard where like all of the car accident cars, I guess, end up going. And the guy had never taken the keys out of the ignition, so the battery died in the Bronco. And like I told you, it still started, it was just crunched. But because it was so smashed, there was no way for us to get to the battery to give it a jump. So him leaving the keys in the ignition kind of really messed us up for moving the Bronco and like transporting it and like making it easy for us to do the next steps with the body of the Bronco. But it was important for us to get the Bronco out of that yard immediately because they charge like a hitch fee, a storage fee, and all these fees get really expensive because generally insurance covers it. But because we didn't have any information from the guy because he fled and then was immediately arrested, we could not contact his insurance company, but we had to get the Bronco out of this yard or else it would continue to accumulate fees. So we paid $400 to get the Bronco out, and they didn't take any responsibility for killing the battery or whatever. Our friend Dan, so my best friend, we grew up together, my best friend Justine, her boyfriend is really into trucks, which is amazing because it means we all get to hang out. It's so good. I couldn't ask for anything better. So her boyfriend is in this truck community and was able to borrow a flatbed to tow the Bronco, but we had to get it out of the tow yard before they close at this like ridiculous time, like 2 p.m. So because the battery was dead, we literally pushed the Bronco into the street because we weren't allowed to park anywhere near the tow yard because I guess people would just pull their car out and park and leave it there until insurance settled. Like, I'm sure people would do that all the time. So you can't park anywhere near there. So there's a median in between the two lanes where we park, where the tow yard was, kind of in like a warehousey kind of district of Philadelphia near the Navy Yard area. So we sat in the car in the median in this busy, like not busy traffic area, but because it was near warehouses and stuff, just tractor trailers were driving past us all the time. It was so scary. But it was raining, so we had to sit in the Bronco. Like everything that could have went wrong. And because the battery was dead on the Bronco, we couldn't drive it up onto the flatbed tow truck, like tow bed. So the boys first tried to bump the Bronco up onto the flatbed with the truck, but it couldn't clear. So they bumped the Bronco as high as they could with the truck onto the flatbed and then literally cranked straps, slowly pulling the Bronco up. Simple Machines went wild for it. The whole time I'm crying, the whole time I'm a mess. Dan was nice enough to give us, use of his yard to store the Bronco, which was something we really needed because we couldn't keep it on our street because, it was completely busted up and just the risk of more damage or theft or whatever. It was so nice that Dan let us keep it there, and it happened very quick, like within 24 hours. So the next day it was getting his insurance. And because he was arrested, we weren't able to exchange any of that information, but this is when it was really good that I had taken those pictures of the make and model of his car and whatever, because in order for us to get a police report, the police report cost $30, and when we went to the police station in the district where the crime was committed, there was a lot of paperwork and stuff they couldn't legally disclose to us. So with that, we were able to call our car insurance company, and I had remembered his first and last name. I put that to memory, the make and model of his car, where the car accident happened. And with that information, the insurance company was able to figure out enough information to find out that the car was registered, the car was legally his, and that the car was insured. So that was amazing news for us, a huge relief, because when you see someone flee the scene of a crime, it's usually because their car isn't insured or isn't registered or isn't theirs. So we were able to find all of that information out, luckily, because when we did go to the police station, we were like, hey, we're technically victims of a crime. And they told us that we could apply for a victim's compensation, but it's a pool, and we just weren't really comfortable taking that money when we knew that the car should be insured, you know? So it was just like a whole mess. It was just so crazy. And every step of the way, it was just like pretty difficult for us to get to the next step. I think it's always really easy to tell someone like you should get a lawyer, but I think the reality of someone just getting a lawyer isn't very much of a reality, especially for us. So we didn't get a lawyer, but basically I think a lawyer would have just did all of the groundwork we did as well. It, you know, was kind of a shame because John had to take like 2 days off work. He took a day off to like kind of just like relax his whole body because like I think after that you're like really tense. And for me, like I told you guys on Twitter, like I took a few days off of work as well just because I was very sad and I had to be there for John, but I really think it took two of us to like go to the detective and talk to the police officers and go to the tow yard and all of this stuff, all the while like grieving the loss of this car that has been in our lives for so long and has so much work and money and attention and all of this stuff put into the Bronco. And you know, it was just really sad. However, this is where it gets kind of tricky with older vehicles because most vehicles, at least in Pennsylvania, if you get into a car accident, you get paid out the value of the car. But because our car almost has no value because it's so old, you have to be able to prove that it's worth money. When the police, I think the chief police or whatever, that might be a crazy title, the guy who wears white instead of the blue uniform, when he came, he was like, oh, you guys should have had classic car tags. When you have classic car tags, you know, most people who drive classic cars as their car will tell you, like, classic car tags, you can't drive at night, you can't drive in the rain, you can only drive so many miles. I think you can't drive over bridges. It would just 100% limit how we would drive the Bronco. And we were driving it as our vehicle, you know. The thing was in the Target parking lot so we could go grocery shopping. Like it was our vehicle. So I told him, I was like, oh, this isn't our show car, like this is our vehicle. When you get in these accidents, people are like, oh, you should have had classic tags, but you know, we're not in a position where we have these cars that we collect. Like, that's just the car that we drive. So luckily for us, there was a lot of documentation of all of the things put onto the Bronco. Unfortunately, things like when we drove to Baltimore to get like a new engine, or when we drove to wherever to get this, or when we went to Delaware to get that, like all of those Craigslist kind of transactions we weren't able to really use, but a lot of the parts bought online we had receipts for like in our email. And then different things like I filmed a video kind of us installing the Eddie Bauer interior. Like that almost became proof of the Bronco's value. And then there were a lot of things on the Bronco that were very, very rare that we were able to show were rare. Like our Bronco had sliding back windows. And if you look in my ASMR Bronco comment section, a bunch of like thirsty truck dudes are like, are you selling those? So we were able to provide that the Bronco had parts on it that were pretty rare. Overall, the payout, I think, that we got for the Bronco, I don't think was a lot, but it was much more than zero. Let me look up the Kelley Blue Book value of a Bronco. So for a 92, the value is $900. So, you know, to lose your car completely and only be offered $900 really sucks. It's less than we paid for it, and it's much less than the materials we put into it. So at least we were able to bump that price up a little bit by including different rarities of the car. If you have an older vehicle and you do work to it or have work done to it, keep those receipts, especially electronically, because we weren't able to actually get an appraiser to come out because it was a unique situation. So you have to hope that your appraiser knows what they're looking at when you're like, look, like this has an adjustable steering column. That's really rare. Like being able to show your appraiser that kind of stuff. So we were able to bump the value up a little bit with the insurance claim, but the insurance company wanted to keep the Bronco. Like, they were gonna pay us out, but they would come with a tow truck and take the Bronco. So we were able to pay them out of our payout to keep the Bronco, but now that we have the Bronco, it can't be fixed. But we can buy a new truck, and then those pieces of the truck that are valuable to us or that we did install can at least be lent to the new Bronco as it comes. Why the Bronco cannot be driven anymore? I saw a few comments that were like, just fix it. And it's kind of hard to understand, especially when you look at it and it looks kind of okay. It looks really messed up, but when you look at it, you're like, oh, it just looks like this. What happened with the Bronco is that all of the stuff in the engine was crushed forward and down, and it bent the frame of the car. In Pennsylvania, if your car frame is bent, it's technically totaled. And in Pennsylvania, your car has to be inspected every year. So with us, even if we fixed the physical damage and the things inside that were crushed, frame of the car would still be bent. And it was bent behind the steering column, so even if we removed that piece and replaced it, because it's where there is a junction of 4 other things, making that piece weaker would potentially harm the integrity of the vehicle and make it unsafe, and still may leave it to not passing inspection. So even if we welded a new piece there where it was bent, there's no saying that that wouldn't weaken all the other spots of the car. So it was just a really unfortunate hit. You know, if the guy would have hit us even a little bit differently, you know, maybe a part of the car could have been bent differently. I asked John, you know, if we were millionaires, could we fix that car? And he said yes, but we're not. So the car, it technically in fairy tale world could be fixed, but we can't fix it. We don't have the financial capacity to put an entire new frame on a vehicle. And this has come up in my life before. My grandparents have a Cavalier, and the frame is too rusted to pass inspection. And I was like, oh, I'll just pay for the repairs. And they were like, you might as well pay for a whole new car. And that's what happens, you know, if your car is in a flood, or in Pennsylvania, we salt our roads, so a lot of rust happens really quickly underneath the cars, which is why we tend to buy our cars out of state. So that's the story of the Bronco. It's just a crazy, from beginning to end, sad drama. I don't know anything about where the guy is, if he's in jail, if he got out, anything like that, I don't know. We were not asked to testify or anything like that in any sort of court thing. I don't know if that happens much later, but it has not happened to this date, and John is pretty FU about that guy, so I don't know how involved John would want to be in anything like that, but I'm not even sure if things like that like go to trial or whatever. I don't know any of that stuff, but that's why we don't have a Bronco anymore. And it's kind of the craziest way it could have went out, and it's pretty sad because I did love that car, and you know, I was a little too scared to drive it, but I did love being a passenger in that car for the longest time. You know, we drove it back from Virginia, we drove it to Pittsburgh, we drove it all over the place. It was a really reliable car. Someone said that it was a dangerous car, and it's just not true. Nobody got hurt. But that's what happened. Since then, John's dad has given us his minivan that he wasn't using, and it's pretty chill. It's an automatic, so I can drive it. It's kind of beat up from being parked in Philadelphia, but I like it, and it serves a similar purpose as our Bronco did. I don't feel cool driving around in it like I did in a Bronco. I felt untouchable in the Bronco, but remember when you were in the Bronco? Yes, sit on my lap. So if you see me cruising in a minivan, that's why. I feel a bit evil. Having the minivan has been pretty cool. I've gone home to see my parents and driven around, and later I'm helping Rosie move a couch, but I miss that Bronco. And if you haven't seen my ASMR video for the Bronco, it was kind of just like my way of saying goodbye, but this is truly, like, this offers much more explanation in case you were looking for one. But anyway, Make sure you subscribe if it's your first time here, and check out some of the newer videos I've been creating on this channel. And if you have a similar story, I'm there with you if you want to leave it in the comments. Anyway, I love you. Bye.